they said humanity was gone. 5,000 years ago, the Great Purge had swept through Sol like fire through dry grass. Earth was glassed, Mars reduced to dust storms, and the scattered colonies burned until their skies turned black. The victors, an alliance of alien empires, broadcast the footage of our end across the galaxy as a warning to every ambitious species: this is what happens when you rise too fast. Over time, our name became a half-remembered curse. Alien scholars debated whether humans had been too aggressive or too naive. Children whispered ghost stories about human warships that could outthink fleets. But no one feared us anymore. We were history, a dangerous chapter closed and forgotten. Or so they thought. Deep in the cold shadow of a rogue star drifting between galaxies, humanity lived. The survivors, only a few million, had fled aboard arcships during the final hours of the Purge. These vessels were never meant to fight, they were vaults of life, carrying seeds, archives, and the last of our people. They drifted for centuries, moving from one uncharted pocket of dark matter to another, hiding from every sensor sweep and every hyperspace route. We became something else in that darkness. We shed our old limits. Generations were born without ever seeing a sun, their eyes adapted to low light, their bones hardened by artificial gravity. Engineers and tacticians rebuilt from scraps, reverse engineering captured alien tech and merging it with designs from Earth's final warships. We learned stealth from the void itself. And we remembered. The elders spoke of the Purge not as history, but as prophecy. One day, they told us, the galaxy will forget the taste of our defiance. And on that day, we will return. That day came sooner than anyone expected. The XYRR Dominion had ruled the spiral arm uncontested for a millennium. Their fleets were unmatched, their armies endless, their arrogance absolute. But in their hunger for control, they began a campaign they called Final Unity, the forcible assimilation of every remaining independent world. It was over a small, green planet named Haskrin that they made their first mistake. Haskrin had no weapons worth speaking of, no fleets, no allies. But it did have something the XYRR didn't know about: a human outpost, hidden for centuries beneath its oceans, quietly monitoring galactic politics. When the XYRR blockade arrived, that outpost sent a signal. Not a plea for help, but a code. A single sequence every human fleet had been waiting for. The first XYRR ships to die never saw their killers. They simply vanished from formation, their signals going dead one by one. The survivors reported impossible readings, ghost contacts that appeared inside their shields, projectiles moving faster than any known mass driver, boarding actions executed by soldiers who bled oxygen like it was nothing. Then, one cycle later, over the XYRR capital itself, a fleet emerged from hyperspace. They were black as the void, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. There were no identifying codes, no markings of allegiance, except for one thing: the banners that unfurled from their lead ships. Old, faded cloth, preserved for millennia. The flag of Earth. The XYRR High Council demanded identification. The reply was a transmission sent across every open frequency in the system. The voice was human, deep, steady, unyielding. We are the children of Sol. We are not extinct. We remember. And then the bombardment began. XYRR's planetary shields, thought to be impenetrable, fell in less than an hour. Human siege craft, powered by a fusion of alien and ancient Earth technology, tore through them with gravitational shear weapons that collapsed the protective barriers from within. The ground shook as the first kinetic strikes hit, not with explosives, but with raw impact. City-sized chunks of tungsten dropped at near relativistic speed. The XYRR fleet scrambled to defend their homeworld, but it was like fighting shadows. Human ships danced between their formations, their stealth drives blinding enemy sensors until it was too late. Boarding pods punched through the hulls of dreadnoughts, and human marines, clad in adaptive armor that shifted colors with the battlefield, cut through corridors like reapers. Every strike was precise. Every target chosen with centuries of planning. It was over in 3 days. The XYRR capital lay in ruins. Their fleet was broken. And across the galaxy, the transmission repeated. The long silence is over. Humanity has returned. The galactic powers scrambled to respond. Some tried to open diplomatic channels, hoping to avoid the fate of the XYRR. Others began fortifying their borders, terrified of being next. But no one knew what humanity truly wanted. We didn't invade worlds for resources. We didn't enslave populations. We struck, destroyed military power, and vanished back into the void. We weren't here to rule. We were here to settle the score. For every burned colony, we burned a fleet. For every world glassed, we left an enemy capital in ashes. And when our vengeance was complete, we would disappear again until the next empire forgot what it meant to cross us. In the dark between stars, aboard the flagship Soul's Wrath, I stood on the observation deck and watched the XYRR homeworld burn. Around me, the crew was silent. No cheers, no celebrations, only the quiet satisfaction of justice long delayed. 5,000 years of silence had ended. And the galaxy would never again mistake our absence for weakness. Because we were not extinct. We were patient. And patience was our greatest weapon. For 2,000 years, the galaxy believed the humans were gone. It wasn't just rumor, the destruction of Sol had been broadcast on every major channel. The footage was burned into alien history, Earth engulfed in fire, its crust split by kinetic strikes, its cities erased in white-hot flashes. The fleets defending it had been annihilated. No escape was possible. Or so the galaxy thought. And yet, the whispers never stopped. Merchant captains spoke of star freighters that vanished without distress calls. Patrol fleets found derelict warships stripped of their weapons and crew. Outpost stations reported glimpses of impossible ships that moved like shadows, here one moment, gone the next. Officials dismissed it all as paranoia, smuggling, or simple lies told by spacers drunk on recycled rum. Ghost stories, they called them. And perhaps they were. Because after all, if humans were alive, why had they never shown themselves? The truth was far worse. We had never died. The so-called extinction was a performance, the final act of humanity's last leaders. The fleets you saw destroyed? Decoys. Empty ships piloted by drones. The flaming cities? Holographic projections layered over evacuation zones. Even Earth's destruction had been staged, a massive crustal detonation that made the planet uninhabitable but left our arc fleets free to escape. Millions of us hid inside hollowed-out asteroids, shielded in deep space cocoons with artificial suns. There we waited, and we adapted. The generations born in the dark became harder, quieter, sharper. Our ships became hunting craft, each one capable of killing a battleship alone. Our fleets no longer traveled openly, they stalked. We didn't fight wars. We waged hunts. One ship here, one there. We made the galaxy feel watched, unsafe. Entire cargo convoys vanished without debris. Military research stations were found stripped bare, every terminal wiped, every scientist missing. The few survivors told of attackers that moved without sound, their faces hidden by adaptive masks, their weapons silent but deadly. They began to call us phantoms. And the name stuck. For centuries, no one knew what we wanted. The truth? We wanted them to grow complacent. To forget how dangerous we were. To stop looking for us. We knew one day they would overreach. One day, an empire would push too far. And that day, we would stop hiding. That day came when the Jacor ascendancy declared the outer purge. The Jacor had grown arrogant. They had crushed half the border civilizations and were moving deeper into independent space. Their fleets were massive, their military doctrine absolute, they didn't negotiate, they erased. And when they turned their attention to the Varen cluster, they unknowingly stepped onto a battlefield they could not win. Because the Varen cluster was ours. The first Jacor invasion fleet entered Varen space without resistance. Their commanders thought the sector abandoned. The first warning came hours later, when 3 of their destroyers simply disappeared. The fleet spread out, hunting for the attacker. That was their second mistake. One by one, their ships went dark. Boarding teams were found butchered in their own corridors. Entire crews suffocated when life support was overridden. Reactor cores detonated without warning. And when the Jacor tried to call for help, they discovered their communications arrays had been overwritten with a single human phrase. "We have been patient. Now we collect." The Ascendancy thought they were facing pirates or rebels. They sent more fleets. Larger fleets. But the bigger the prey, the harder we struck. We infected their navigation systems, forcing ships to collide in hyperspace. We jammed their targeting sensors, making them shoot their own escorts. We stole their officers alive, broadcasting their confessions across enemy space before sending their escape pods hurtling into suns. The Jacor homeworld panicked. And then, they saw us. It happened in their own capital system. A formation of black-hulled warships decloaked in high orbit, perfectly positioned above their fleet command center. No warning. No threats. Just the silent, terrifying arrival of predators who had been stalking them for generations. The flagship, an angular spearhead of matte black steel, opened a wideband channel. A human voice, calm and unhurried, spoke. "Your kind once hunted us. You believed we were gone. For 2,000 years, we watched you grow fat and arrogant. Now, the hunt ends." And with that, we moved. The battle wasn't a battle, it was an execution. Our ships were faster, more precise. Every enemy formation was cut apart before it could regroup. We didn't just target warships, we crippled their shipyards, erased their supply lines, and turned their own defense satellites against them. Their capital city fell in less than a day. And then, as suddenly as we had appeared, we were gone. No occupation. No demands. Just silence and the smoldering wreckage of an empire that had thought itself untouchable. The galaxy erupted in fear. The word human returned to every council chamber and war room. Alliances scrambled to rewrite their defensive doctrines. Trade routes shifted to avoid suspected human hunting grounds. Some tried to open diplomacy, we answered none. Because the Phantom War wasn't about conquest. It was about memory. I was there, on the bridge of the Black Spear, watching the Jacor capital burn. My captain, an old man born in the asteroid arcs, stood beside me, his voice little more than a whisper. "They forgot," he said. "Now they will never forget again." And in that moment, I understood. The galaxy would always think twice before hunting humanity again. Because we weren't just survivors. We were patient predators. And our patience had finally run out. The era this empire prided itself on efficiency. When they waged war, there were no survivors. No half measures. No lingering resistance. They believed a species should be erased so thoroughly that history itself forgot it ever existed. And for 1,000 years, they boasted of their greatest victory, the extermination of humanity. Their official records told the story in clinical detail. How the humans defied imperial law, how their fleets were broken, their homeworld reduced to molten slag. How every colony, every station, every outpost had been cleansed by this fire. The galaxy accepted this history without question. The humans were gone, reduced to ash and memory. But the this had lied to themselves. On the day they destroyed Earth, they missed something. Not a fleet, not a city, but a single convoy of evacuation vessels that escaped into deep space. They were old mining haulers, stripped and reinforced for long-range travel, carrying the last 3 million humans left alive. Those ships vanished into the icy dark beyond mapped hyperspace lanes, a place the this considered not worth pursuing. There, in exile, humanity swore an oath. Every child born in those wandering fleets learned the names of the this generals who had ordered the slaughter. Every classroom taught history as a wound, every ship was a shrine to what had been lost. And every human, from the youngest cadet to the oldest engineer, carried the same words in their heart. We will return. And they will pay. The generations passed. Our fleets grew from patched-together haulers to warships built for a single purpose of vengeance. We studied this battle doctrine until we could predict their movements before they made them. We trained for wars the galaxy had never seen, arming ourselves with weapons that bent the very rules of physics. Our ships bore no names, only numbers, but every hull was engraved with a set of coordinates, the location of Earth's final battlefield. A reminder. A promise. The Era-This had grown complacent. They had expanded their empire across 3 spiral arms, their military spread thin but unchallenged. They had no memory of human tactics, no living veterans of that war. To them, humanity's extinction was a settled fact. And that was when we struck. It began with disappearances. Era-This convoys went missing in border space. Patrol stations reported entire star systems going dark, their beacons snuffed out without distress calls. Then, without warning, one of their core worlds lost all orbital communications. When they sent a fleet to investigate, they found their shipyards gone, the massive orbital structures dismantled and hauled into deep space. They still didn't know it was us. Not yet. The revelation came over the Era-This homeworld itself. A fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, positioned above the Imperial capital. The ships were unlike anything in their databases, black-armored, angular, bristling with weapons that emitted no detectable energy signatures. The lead ship broadcast a message on every channel, every frequency, in a voice that was calm, deliberate, and utterly human. We were the children of Sol. You murdered our world, burned our skies, and called it justice. For 1,000 years, we have carried the weight of that day. We come not to conquer, but to balance the scales. Panic spread across the Era-This fleets. They scrambled to intercept, but our ships moved like predators, slipping past their formations, crippling their carriers before they could launch fighters, shredding their cruisers with focused graviton beams. Their planetary defense grid, designed to repel massive invasions, was useless against a surgical strike. We didn't destroy their cities randomly. Every target was deliberate, the military academies that had trained the officers who led the purge, the war factories that had built the weapons that killed our people, the palaces of the families who had profited from our destruction. We struck fast, precise, and without mercy. The Era-This tried to negotiate. They offered territory, wealth, amnesty. We ignored them. This was not a war for conquest. It was a reckoning. By the 3rd day, their fleets were shattered. By the 5th, their empire was fractured, governors on distant worlds declaring independence rather than face our wrath. And by the 7th, the Era-This homeworld was surrounded. From the bridge of the Vigil of Sol, I watched the final bombardment begin. Our kinetic strikes tore through their orbital defenses, our rail slugs punching deep into the planet's crust. Entire continents burned in hours. And yet, we left survivors. That was the point. We wanted them to remember. To tell the galaxy what happens when you try to erase humanity. When the bombardment ended, we broadcast our final message. The debt of blood is paid. But remember, we keep our books open. Then we vanished into hyperspace, leaving their homeworld in ruins but alive enough to speak. The galaxy trembled. Empires rewrote their histories overnight, removing any mention of human weakness. Border fleets doubled their patrols, and whispers of our return spread like wildfire. Some saw us as avengers. Others, as a warning. But all understood the truth: humanity was not a victim. We were an executioner that waited 1,000 years to deliver the sentence. I can still hear the words of my grandmother, spoken in the dark corridors of the Ark fleet when I was a child. They think time makes wounds fade. But time only sharpens the blade. And on the day we cut the Era-This to the bone, I finally understood what she meant. The galaxy would never again mistake silence for weakness. Because we were not gone. We were patient. We were watching. And we had paid the debt of blood in full.